You must recognize this guy. This guy was viral over Reddit and Twitter and LinkedIn, wherever you were. And what he did is he created an app using Cursor without writing any code. And this app worked really well for him. He got paying customers and he talked about it online almost every day. But something happened. Some person attacked his app, and then weird things started happening. His API keys were exposed. People started bypassing subscription. Then his database was hacked. And eventually, this guy had to shut down his app, which was very sad to see. And that makes everyone who is using AI tools to build their app right now very skeptical. And that includes me. I make apps using just AI. I've launched some of them. And that also makes me a bit worrisome about what might happen to those apps in the future. But if I just look around, this is not limited to people who are building their apps with Cursor. So this guy, Jack Fricks, he has 3 apps. All of them are doing well in revenue. And last week, someone even attacked his app. His database started receiving a lot of fake signups on the app. Along with that, the person also attacked their Vercel, creating a lot of fake requests that just bumps up your Vercel cost and everything. So it can easily cost you thousands of dollars if someone tries to do something like this with your app. And this even happens with people who know how to code as well. So this is not something that is specific to people who are creating apps with AI. This is just part of the process. Another similar example, this guy called Emmett Ham. I have been following him from a while. He was also one of the people looking at whom I just got inspired to learn how to code. And when he shares about his journey of how he learned coding, he talks about how he was a non-technical person and then he learned how to build, and he also made a lot of these similar mistakes. He exposed his OpenAI keys and all his credits were burnt. He also had to pay a hefty Vercel bill of $3,000 because a lot of people started using his app. So sadly, this is actually part of the process. So in this video, I just wanted to cover all of these basic mistakes that a lot of people who are building apps for the first time make. And because of that, they have to pay huge bills or all of their credits are gone. And this can happen to anyone. This can happen to people who vibe code their apps with AI or even people who are seasoned developers. So let's get into it. In this video, I would be covering 3 major things. One is the most important security threats. So this would make your app 90% secured. Then the second segment would be around covering things that are although important, but they account for only 10% of the security threats that are out there. And third, I would be covering rules for AI that you can use within your Cursor or Windsurf while you are coding, so that your system automatically does not create any such security vulnerabilities. If you are someone who is about to launch an app, I would want you to go through all the 3 segments. If you are someone who is in the process of creating the app, but you're not launching it like this week, even then you should go through the entire video. But if you are short on time, just go through the first segment where I cover the threats that account to 90% of the issues, and just go through the last segment where I just share rules for AI. You can use the highlights at the bottom for navigating through these sections, but just bookmark this video, come back to it whenever you are launching your app. So the first thing is keeping your environment variables secured. These are basically your OpenAI keys, your Supabase keys, and stuff like that. The most important thing people do is that they publish their secret keys in their code itself. They either hard code it in the code or they basically deploy their .env file as well. .env file is a file where you store all these environment variables. So if you are using a .env file, do make sure that you are adding it in the git ignore list in your project. So let me quickly show you what it is. So if you go within your project over here, you will see that there is a .env file over here which stores all of your API keys. Just for showing you in this video, I created a quick copy of this folder within the repository itself. I've deleted my Supabase anon key from here because that is sensitive. You need to keep your .env file secured. You should never deploy it with your project. For doing that, you have this git ignore file. Within this, you should add your .env file. You can just mention it to Cursor for adding your .env file to this git ignore file over here. If you are setting up a JavaScript project, rather it be Next.js or White.js, these are majorly the kind of projects that Lovable or Cursor creates when you ask it to create an app. So just ask it to add the .env file in git ignore, and that would make sure that your environment variables are not pushed to GitHub while you are deploying your project. The next thing is that you need to understand that there are public and private keys. So public keys are basically so if I go back in my .env folder over here, you will see that this is my Supabase URL. So this is basically the public part of the key. I can show it, I can deploy it on the server, but then there is a private key or secret part of the key. So this was basically the anon key that I have deleted from here. So if someone have access to the private key, then they can delete or add or do anything to your database. For example, in the case of using any LLM's API, Claude or OpenAI, then you get a single API key, and that's the private key. So if someone gets access to it, then they can use your API key and it would be built against your account. So that's why it is important to understand that what is a private key and what is a public key and what you can share with anyone. And lastly, while you're deploying on Vercel or Netlify or any other hosting platform, rather than pushing your .env folder over here, what is the recommended way of doing this is, I will just go to my Vercel, I will select one of the projects here, and within the project, I have an option for adding my API key. Just go to your project settings and select environment variables. Over here, you can create these environment variables. What you have to do is you just copy these environment variables from your .env file and you create them on Vercel directly. So that way you don't need a .env file and all of your credentials would stay safe over here on Vercel. So if you just follow all of these things, then you would never leak your API keys. And this is what happens to most of the people when they deploy any of their projects in public. Now, the second thing is that you need to validate user input. When user is interacting with your app and filling out a form or uploading any file, a hacker can use this opportunity for opening a backdoor within your system, and they can store information like their cookies, their session details. The best way of preventing this is using a validation tool like Zod. What Zod does is it makes sure that whatever entry is required in that field, let's say it being an email or a phone number, the person is filling exactly that. If they fill in anything apart from that, then basically it does not accept the response and it understands that they are trying to do something fishy with your site. So as long as you use Zod, you are secured from these kind of attacks. Now the third thing is rate limiting. This was the exact thing that happened with the Jack Fricks example that we looked at the start. What happens in this case is that a hacker can basically send a lot of requests to your sites. Either they can send requests to your server, basically where your website is hosted, or they can send a lot of fake signups that would get stored in your database. And both of them can initiate a DDoS attack. So basically, your server will stop responding because it will think that it is under attack, and then your website would go down. So the best way of preventing this or keeping your website safe from this is applying rate limit. There are two major ways how you can do this. One is you can implement this within your project itself. So if you are creating a Next.js project, then you can implement it within your middleware, or you can use any third-party libraries for doing this as well. The best way of doing this is within your Next.js project itself. And the second place where you can do this is on your hosting platform. If you are using something like Vercel, then you can use web application firewall for this. It is not turned on by default. I will add a link to it in the description. You can check out how to turn it on. This also helps you in saving money because Vercel charges you for the amount of hits that you get on your website. So if someone does an attack like this, then it also inflates your Vercel bill. And lastly, if you are not tied to Vercel, I would recommend you to go with Cloudflare for hosting your website. It has the best protection when it comes to DDoS attacks. I have been using it for a lot of my projects, and I have just seen it that it has a better built-in support for all of these security issues. Now, the last point, which would be covering the 90% of the security threats, this is keeping your database secured. Your database is where you store all the user information, all the session details, everything that your app needs to remember. The vulnerability over here is that if your front end, basically the face of your website, if it can directly interact with your database, then it can cause problems. If you go to any website and when you click on inspect and you go to console, over here, all the things that are happening on the backend are shown to anyone who's using the site. So if your front end is directly communicating with your backend, then all your backend details like what was the API call being made, what is the address of your database, all of it will show up over here. And that can make your site vulnerable who is to anyone who's trying to attack it. So that's why it's best that you create API routes. This is also something that comes in by default in Next.js. You can use API routes for handling all of these database calls. So what would be happening is your system would not directly be connecting with database. Your front end would be making an API call, and this API call would be making a change within the database. So a hacker can get to know what that API call is, but they cannot change anything on your database. The recommended way over here, something that I do myself is I use Supabase for all of my projects. So over here, I use edge functions within Supabase for making all the API calls, for making all the changes within my database. So if you are using Supabase for your project, use edge functions for making all the API calls. And lastly, enable row level security on Supabase. So this way, no one else can edit your tables. These would protect you from 90% of the security threats online. If you have been watching so far, then I would recommend you to stick on for the next 5 to 10 minutes as well. That would make sure you know everything for keeping your vibe coded app secured. Next thing is always use pre-built authentication tools. You can use tools like Clerk Auth or Supabase Auth while you are setting up Auth for your app. Definitely, you can build these systems yourself, but that would just add a lot of security hassles for you to worry about. And why do you have to build something that is already out there and that works really well? And when you are setting up these authentication tools, prefer OAuth, basically ways for people to log in using their Google accounts, GitHub accounts, or using magic links. Storing passwords and usernames in your database will just add another layer of security issues that can come up in the future. So always use pre-built authentication tools. And final one is checks that you should definitely do before you are launching your app. First one is remove all the console logs from your app, because all these console log information that Cursor adds while you are creating your app contains information about a user, about certain things that Cursor might have added in between because it want to see if there is any error or where at which exact point the app is failing. You don't need them while your app is in production, and you should definitely remove them before launching your app. The second thing is hide all the system errors. So similar to console log, your Cursor also add detailed descriptions to any system error that comes up. So before you're deploying your app, you would want Cursor to change all of these system errors to something standard, like something went wrong, rather than exposing all the details about what actually happened. It might expose something like your database URL or anything else. Third is updating your database URL and callback URL. So within your project in your .env folder, you would be mentioning your database URL. So it's important that you check it before deploying if it's the right one. And the second thing, callback URL. When you are setting up OAuth using any tool like Clerk or Supabase, then over there, if you are using a Google sign up option, then you might have to update the callback URL. You would have to update that callback URL on Google Console. Lastly, you should audit all the dependencies within your app. So it's very easy to do. Just run this command called npm audit. in the terminal before deploying, and it will show you all of such vulnerabilities or packages that you might not be using. You can also use tools like Sync and Dependabot. So that was all in terms of things that you should worry about while you are launching your app. Just make sure you follow these 6 things and your app would be 100% secured when you are launching it. And finally, if you are using Cursor or Windsurf for coding, you also have an option for adding rules for AI. Over there, you can specify all these things, basically the things that I mentioned just now, in the rules so that your Cursor or Windsurf itself is not making all those mistakes. So these are the rules for AI that I have added in the description. You can download them from there and you can use them within your Cursor. You can copy this entire list from here, everything below this divider, and you can go within your project. And when you go to settings over here, you will see this icon called rules. Over here, you already might have some rules that you have set up in your Cursor. You can add the new rules over here. So just paste this entire set of rules that you added, and Cursor would make sure that all of them are being followed while you are making your app the next time. And lastly, if you want more tips like these, and if you want to understand all the consideration that you should make while you are making your app with AI, I have something for you. Some days back, I released a guide including everything that I learned over the last 6 months on creating apps using AI without writing any code. And I packaged all of it together in this guide where you can get the exact steps that I follow when I'm creating apps. This include 4 hours of lessons which you can easily complete in a weekend and follow along guides so you can build your app as you are following along these lessons. These can help you build an MVP just over a weekend. And if you spend like a week on perfecting your app, then you can also launch it within a week. This is the fastest way of learning development right now. The price of the guide keeps going up because we want to maintain the quality of the community and the support. This price is only valid for the next 20 slots. Do check it out. The link is in the description. See you on the other side. Bye bye.